So a couple minutes ago, I'm looking at the Blender subreddit, of course, going to top of today, because, that's what we all do. And I see this, it's a pretty satisfying render of some cubes spinning and stuff like this. But the title, Satisfying Enough, that irked me, because, they're like, they're going to be like, yeah, that is satisfying. And I know you're trying to bait me. No, I'm not satisfied. We can do better. In fact, the version I'm going to show you how to make is basically the same thing, credit to the creator, but we can control the number of slabs and I guess also the speed of rotation, but generally we can control the resolution and density of it, and it's a very simple project to make. So let's make it. No time to waste. I'm using Blender 3.1 Alpha. You can use 3.0. You can also go live in the woods. That's an equally crazy decision. So here's how we're going to do it. It's all geometry nodes. Go into geonodes, take the cube, make it a geometry nodes thing. So we have a geometry nodes modifier, and I'm actually, even though we're going to be using cubes, I'm going to delete it just in spirit of deleting the default cube. And we're going to add in our cubes manually using some math. So to have a stack of these, kind of like a stack of pancakes, we need to instance them vertically on the z-axis on top of each other. To do this, I'm going to generate a mesh line, and you can think of this as, it's not the line that I care about, it's the points that make up this line, because each one of these is going to have a cube that I care about. So I'm going to set this to an endpoint, maybe make it 4 units tall, and it's composed of 10 points. So if I was to look at these heights, that's where these cubes are going to be spawned in. In fact, let's actually spawn those in right now. It's a super simple project. Instance on points. What is it that we want to instance? A cube. So let's instance the cube. And you can see we have 10 cubes that are intersecting, but they are on top of each other. To make them not intersect, we need to know what is their, vertical width supposed to be, or height is probably a better word. And that is something we should calculate mathematically, because what if I add in more cubes or change the height and all this, right? We need a density function. So if you think about it, if our line goes from the origin to 4 units tall, and it's composed of 10 points, of course the height should be 4 divided by 10, because we spanned that length and we divide it into 10 sections. In general, so you can see that works, in general, we can turn this into a math expression to make this nice and procedural. So let's combine x, y, z. The reason I'm doing this is so I can put in my numbers as like parameters. So instead of putting in 4, I want to have a value slider for this. So just the z component, and then I also want a slider for the number of instances, or the number of points that compose the line. We take these two numbers and divide them, just as we were saying, We're just doing it symbolically now, though, with the nodes. Take this, and we want it to be the z component of the height. So again, combine x, y, z. X and y equal to 1. We don't need to change those, but the z is this stretching thing. So if you understood nothing about what I just said, the key takeaway is now when we increase the divisions, you can see we get more cubes that are still the correct width in the z-axis. But also if we change the height of this, it will keep the same number, but it will change the height of these. So you can see it scales in this way that makes sense. So now I can kind of shape what I want this to look like. So maybe I only want it 3 units tall and a couple more slabs. In fact, let me make it 2 units tall. And we could customize this until the cows come running home. Do cows run? I feel like they're too fat. Bulls are cows? Bulls definitely run. Either way, what we need to do now is put in a rotating function and actually make these spin. And if you look at the original post from the Reddit that somehow got top post, the key clue is this bottom slab that isn't rotating at all. And what that tells us is probably the way this person did it is they had rotation be this constant thing, but it's going to be scaled by the index as we go upwards. The index of the bottom one being 0, so it's not rotating. That's probably the idea here. So what am I saying? We are going to rotate these points, in other words, the instances, like that. I'm going to make this a kind of free-floating thing that we can edit just like before, and it's this z component relative to the z-axis that we want to spin, okay? How are we going to make it spin over time? Well, there's this new node added. I believe it's in 3.0. It might be a 3.1 feature. If not, so here we get frame information for seconds and frames. Super nice. If you don't have that, feel free to add in a value node and type in hash frame, which will give you the frame number on every frame. Just updates. but we have this convenient function. So let me just put in seconds here and see what happens. Okay, we get a automatic spinning. It's going to do, it's not one rotation per second because this is in radians. It's going to do one rotation every 6.28, 2 pi seconds. Either way, we have our rotation, but we want it to scale by the index, the height, okay? So to do that, we just literally need to scale it. We need to multiply it by what? The index. Again, the line that we generated before is composed of points. Each of those has an index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 up until this number. And I guess we should probably have this round up to the nearest whatever. And this is the index value that we want to scale by. So if I do this, you can see it's going way too fast, but the core idea here exists. So the bottom slab's not moving at all because we're multiplying by 0. And as we ascend the tower, the speed of rotation's increasing. To overall make this slower, kind of a quick little modification we can do is we can literally just slow down our time input. So let's, instead of multiplication, let's think about it. Division, we divide by 2. It's going to be twice as slow. But you can see they're going to be out of sync until 2 seconds elapse. So 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, connect, And you could think of this as the number of seconds it takes for a full period of the thing. But what's the key insight here? The key insight is I change the number of slabs, and the math is going to scale, and it's still going to do this synchronicity thing, okay? So there's our core thing, and it scales in all the ways we talked about. Now, how do we make it look good? Well, the original had kind of these beveled cubes, and still, I don't believe we have the bevel operation. Nope. We can't bevel in geometry nodes quite yet. So there's 2 ways around this. You could either, actually, this is probably fastest to do this. Just add in a bevel node, or a bevel modifier. Am I crazy? Increase the segments, and is it even doing anything? Doesn't seem to be doing anything. Well, that didn't work. Plan 2, we're going to do it inside of geometry nodes even though we don't have bevel. Now, I am confused why that did not seem to work. Very strange. Either way, here's how we do it in geometry nodes. So we're going to kind of fake it with subdivision surface. So if we do subdivision surface, it's going to smooth it out. In fact, too much. So what we need to do, and it's going to turn it into disks, what we need to do is we need to add more supporting edge loops, more geometry before we do the smoothing. So we can subdivide our mesh. So again, this is just affecting the cube that is getting instanced every time. We subdivide it a couple times, and you can see it does that, then it does our subdivision surface, and it's nice and smooth now. In fact, I'm going to lower the levels here and increase the levels on the subsurf, maybe by 4. And this might break it, but you can try doing a set shade smooth to make it nice and clean. No, that worked. And that's how you get clean slabs without beveling or anything. In fact, I suspect the person probably also made it this way. Kind of final thing here is kind of just lighting and setup for the background. I'm just going to do a quick version of this. So this isn't geonodes, but there's no reason you couldn't. I'm just going to set up a basic kind of studio lighting setup. And by that, I mean I'm going to use an HDRI. I'm a lazy fuck. Have the stack on top of this, I guess it should be a bit lower. On top of this curved floor that's going to bounce lighting and all that. It's going to look nice. And to make it look good, 1, make sure you're in cycles for global illumination because that's the main thing that's going to make it look good. And second of all, pick an HDRI. HDRI Haven's a great place to get free. Not a gradient texture. But I never thought about using a gradient texture as the environment. That's clever. I'll go back to that at some point. HDRI Haven's a great place to find some free HDRIs. Either way, pick lighting. This looks honestly fine. So go with something like that. For the materials, let's be nice and lazy. So I would just go to the shading workspace, but we do need to do some fanciness with the geometry nodes. So in this, we need to actually assign our material inside of this geonodes group. So we do the cube, we subdivide, we make it smooth, and then before we instance it, let's just give it a material because whatever material we give the original cube that gets copied, we still want it to have the same material. So it's fine to do it before or after. So we have a material. Now it should be affecting it. Yeah. I forget, honestly, what it looked like, so let's just pick 2 complementary colors, like orange and blue. We make this orange, click the background, new material, you make it blue. It's the easiest project in the world. For this one, you might consider upping the roughness so that you don't get this reflection in the background. But yeah, you just take the camera and point it at this, so let's just kind of do that. and then I will have proved that I know how to make this better than the original guy. Wow, have I shown my manliness? Whatever. Camera, you want to zoom it in too. The orthographic look is something that kind of supports this. And let's just kind of position this and looks okay. Of course, the things that make this look good is the polish and the motion blur and all this. But you can see, generally we have the thing. And I just, again, want to note the key insight here is this thing entirely stacks. Let's do it in solid view. Now, the higher the index, the faster the top one's going to spin. So I'd recommend going lower rather than higher. Although we could add a function to kind of account for that. So we could divide the index by some maximum number. Either way, I think at this point we have adequately created this. Cool. How long was that? I assume it wasn't almost under 10 minutes, but not quite. Either way, thank you for watching my tutorial of me just taking people's Blender projects that they're just like, oh, here's the thing, I'd like to share it. And me being like, no, better. You're not allowed to have fun. Thanks for watching. And at this point, I always like to mention my Patreon. There's something like 750 to 760 active patrons, and they can't all be wrong. Why should you join? Here's my spiel. I'll make it nice and brief and quick. Patrons get access to a whole bunch of stuff. Link in the description. When you become a patron, you get early access to tutorials. So you could have seen this tutorial early or a couple days early. For this one, I believe it's actually going to be a couple days early. But in general, that's true. Watch tutorials early, unlike the filthy just YouTube people. Patreon's the place to get it early. 1. 2, you get the blend file. So this blend file will be provided because why not? It's just, basic geonodes group. But any blend I've ever uploaded over the last 2 or 3 years, which is a couple hundred at this point, you can download. They go back pretty far. And then lastly, exclusive tutorials. Those are tutorials that are only available for patrons. This month, I made a hyper advanced, like 40 to 50 minute geometry nodes tutorial about the Ritz Cracker project from a bit ago. But that's a monthly thing. Sometimes I do it multiple times a month. But either way, if any of these interest you or you want to support this channel or CG Matter, Patreon is the most direct way to do that, and you get benefits when you do it. So it's a win-win. If you're interested, link in the description, and I think I've said my spiel, and that's it.